welcome to the first official podcast of the Kings of the Rink. We're all contributors from sports-kings.com, Around the Rink site. We have all your hockey news. My name is Joe. I'm the assistant site manager over at Around the Rink. I'm joined today by two of our great writers. First off, we have the pride of South Carolina, who's ready to break some big news about the Washington Capitals. Mr. Michael, how are you doing today?
I'm enjoying some of you guys' crispy northern weather today. It's a crispy 25, and it was 75 the other day. I don't get it. Mother Nature, you are completely killing me right now.
When you get a crispy 10 degrees, let me know.
Oh, I've been there before.
One guy who does know about the cold, though, is one of our newer writers, Kelvin. He's joining us on the show today. Kelvin, how are you doing?
Oh, we're doing good. It's a bombing 7 degrees outside out in Bath, New York area. It's very cold, so I'll take 25 over 7 there, Mike.
Fantastic. Yeah, right up here in the Buffalo suburbs, we got about 10 degrees. So rocking the cold weather, which is perfect for hockey talk. Let's get right into it. Before we get into too much trade deadline stuff, which is most of what we're going to be doing today, I hear Michael has some big news about his Washington Capitals.
Yeah, well, I don't even want to call it late breaking. This is completely fresh, hot off the press. Read all about it. Evgeny Kuznetsov, as soon as he's done with his KHL game today, he is hopping on that big steel bird, flying across the pond. He will be in a Washington Capitals uniform later this week. I don't know if anybody else other than Washington Capitals fans are going to be excited because this kid's going to tear apart the NHL. Within the next 5 years, you're going to be calling him probably the greatest playmaker since Jaromir Jagr. He's going to be insane. Watch out. And this is perfect, too, because with the playoff rush coming, the Capitals are only – no, they're tied. They're tied with the Detroit Red Wings right now for second place and for the second wildcard spot. This could be the offensive spurt that we need. So, thank God.
Yeah, exactly. That's bigger than trading for a guy like a Matt Molson, who would just be a scoring rental player. This is the guy that they drafted in the first round back in 2010, I believe. And he's going to come in. He's going to be a force. He's been doing very well in the KHL, and I know they have very high expectations for him in Washington.
It couldn't come sooner.
Okay, so with that, we'll get right into this trade deadline stuff. The big name everybody's talking about, as we can see in Kelvin's attire, is the Buffalo Sabres. They are bracing themselves for full fire sale. This is no holds barred. They've already moved Ryan Miller and Steve Ott to the St. Louis Blues. That trade brought back a lot. They got goalie Yaroslav Halak and right winger Chris Stewart, who both are already rumored to be back on the trade block after dressing with Buffalo against Dallas last night. They got a prospect forward named William Carrier, who's a promising kid in the Quebec Junior League. And they got 2 draft picks out of it. So I think they got a pretty good return. But Kelvin, let's chip it over to you. What do you think of that trade?
It's all going to depend on the Miller situation. Does he re-sign? Do they make the Western Conference Finals? Obviously they got a great deal getting Stewart, but he's more than likely getting shipped off to Ottawa, even though the talks have calmed down about that because the asking price is just too high right now between Cousin Murray here and Cousin Murray in Ottawa. But overall, it's a great trade, I think. You got Halak. I mean, I don't know why you trade him unless you really want to bring up Hackett from the AHL straight up and be your backup goalie for the rest of the year. I'd really like to see him sign Halak. He's great. He's not a Ryan Miller great, but he's right there. 2.96 goals against average or something like that. 926 save percentage, top 10 in the league over the past 10 years.
Yeah, Halak's definitely a solid goalie. He has playoff experience, and I think as much as the Sabres like Jonas Enroth, I think they would be okay with Yaroslav Halak as their goalie for a couple of years until they can develop a prospect. I know Matt Hackett down in the AHL, he has not been doing well. He's been ceding a lot of ice time to Nathan Lowen, and he was supposed to be one of the big trade chips that came back from Minnesota for Jason Pominville. So that's not working out too much.
I see that whole trade hasn't even worked out.
Yeah, Johan Larsson is looking like he could be a fourth liner, but he'll probably be a hopper between bottom 6 NHL and AHL. Mike, what do you think about Ryan Miller's future in St. Louis, and Steve Ott too, for that matter, because Steve Ott's a guy that's also a unrestricted free agent after this year?
Well, I mean, obviously, when I first heard about the deal, I wasn't really too surprised that Ryan Miller went to St. Louis because I think that's where everybody's just. It was either St. Louis or up in Minnesota, but I didn't think Minnesota had the pieces to do a deal. But with St. Louis, they obviously get their guys. They get that push to maybe get over the Western Conference hump. You got a really strong Chicago team, a really strong San Jose team, and this Anaheim Ducks team. I don't know where these guys came from, but these guys are just unreal this year. So yeah, shout out to the guys in Washington, George McPhee, Ted Leonsis for really letting go of Gabby. I'm still really upset about that one, but I think the Sabres actually got a better deal out of this than the Blues did. I mean, you get a guy like Yaroslav Halak who's still got a lot of good years ahead of him. Granted, their defensive core in Buffalo is not exactly where St. Louis's is right now. Who's to say that maybe, in a few years when a guy like Rasmus Ristolainen comes up, I know, Joe, you and I were having some conversations about him early in the week about being just an absolute stud. I mean, that guy has just been putting up some impressive numbers. The guy can skate. He's big already. You got a guy like Nikita Zadorov, who's another big guy, who's only been on American ice for, I think it's been like 2 seasons now, and he's already well adjusted. When he came into London a couple years ago, he took Jared Tenorti's spot in the lineup, and he just automatically boomed. William Carrier, this is the second time this season he's been traded. He got moved from his team in Cape Breton, home of the Screaming Eagles. Shipped him off to Drummondville with the Voltigeurs. You gotta love. I love the Q. I get to spout off French that I don't even know what it means, so that's always great. And then an extra first-round pick, be it either this year or next year. It's a great move for Buffalo. It's what Buffalo wanted. St. Louis got guys that they can use now and possibly in the future, depending on salary cap issues. And let's see. I wouldn't be too upset as a hockey fan in general if Chris Stewart stayed in Buffalo. It's a guy they could build around. He's a young guy. He's only 26. He's put up 20 goals before. He's got the size, he's got speed, he's got strength. He could really do some damage if you put some guys around him that can help him out there.
Yeah, Chris Stewart's a guy that I've watched for a couple of years now in the league, and I think he's a bigger, possibly better goal-scoring version of Drew Stafford, more or less. And Stafford's also a guy that a lot of people have said, hey, maybe he moves on from Buffalo at some point.
I actually got to watch Chris Stewart in 2007. He was playing with the Albany River Rats when the River Rats were still in Albany, and I was living in Hershey at the time. They had their first round playoff series was against the Bears, and Chris Stewart suited up for a couple games with the River Rats when they came to Hershey. And he was he was still just fresh out of junior. He didn't score any points, but the kid could fly. I mean, for a kid his size, he could really move. So I mean, he's got the skill.
Now, I don't know if you guys watched the Sabres game last night like I did, but I know it's his first game in Buffalo, but he showed no interest whatsoever being there. He was flat-footed. It was god-awful. No defense whatsoever in the defensive zone. They got outshot 36-16, I believe it was. It was a nightmare.
Yeah, it was not a good game, and Jonas Enroth stood on his head, really. He made some great saves.
He made his best Ryan Miller impression.
I hear what you're saying. Chris Stewart's a guy that's going to be back on the block. On that note, let's hop right into, with the Sabres, how many other guys they could move. Because basically every other rumor you're hearing is about somebody with Buffalo going somewhere else. It doesn't stop with Halak and Stewart. It's Tyler Myers. It's Matt Molson. It's
Christian Ehrhoff.
Christian Ehrhoff, exactly. Him going to Detroit is the big one I've seen. Let's start this one off with Michael. Mike, outside of Halak and Stewart, who do you think is going to be the most likely Sabre to be traded?
Well, let's start with one thing. Who's the most likely Sabre to stay? Why would you trade? For me, if I was general manager of the Sabres right now, I would build around Tyler Myers. He's 24, 25 maybe, correct? How
24.
Guys? 24? Okay,
24.
So he's my age. He's 6'8". He scored the only 2 goals your team had last night.
No, that was Tyler Ennis.
Tyler Myers, Tyler Ennis. Either way, somebody has got to be scoring goals. He's 6'8". He's a Calder Trophy winner. why not build your defensive core around that guy? Put him with a nice, veteran in free agency. 6'8", you can't teach that size. Why trade the Big Easy? I mean, come on.
Kelvin, as someone that's watched the Sabres more over the last few years, perhaps you can educate our friend Michael and some of our viewers on the shortcomings that Tyler Myers has had over the past few years.
Tyler Myers' shortcomings. Where do you start? Do you start with his off-season workout habits, where he wants to gain 35 pounds of fat and come into camp out of shape, and it takes him 2 months to get back in hockey shape? That's just a start. His lack of hustle out on the ice is another thing. He seems to get in a funk, and he'll turn the puck over in front of the net, leads to open goals. It's another thing that Ryan Miller was complaining about, was that they always found a way to turn it over, and Tyler Myers was a key part of that. He doesn't use his body. He's 6'8", like you said, 6'8", 197 pounds, something like that. He doesn't use his size whatsoever. He's afraid to hit. That one game where he did hit against Boston last year, he got suspended for it. I believe he got suspended this year too.
Yeah,
for a game or two.
He had a suspension earlier this year for a hit. I want to say
I believe it was the
New
Boston
Jersey.
game. New Jersey or Boston?
It was one of those,
remember
but it was a hit where he was hitting a guy that was at least 6 inches shorter than him, and just exploded up and got the elbow. But that's a tall guy problem. John Scott had the same thing.
But I think that's his biggest fear, is that he's going to get suspended now. He's already been suspended once, so he doesn't like to hit.
Yeah,
but
and
lately his forecheck has been good. His forecheck has been really good.
Yeah, he's been a lot better over the last 2 months ever since Ted Nolan's come in. But at 6'8", 230, you would like the guy to be a bit more physical. But I think the willingness is more because the Sabres have a lot of other right-handed defensemen and just a lot of defensive prospects in general that I think they feel very good about, that they could be top 4 guys. Ristolainen, obviously, we talked about, right-handed shot. He's about 6'4", 220. He's a guy that could be your top right-handed defenseman in this league. A lot of people will hop on Mark Pysyk as a guy that hasn't really been that good this year. He's back in the AHL, but he's a very quiet player. He's a guy that, he won't put up the flashy numbers. He won't make the flashy plays. But generally speaking, he's responsible. He's smart with the puck. He's smart in his defensive end. He's a guy that will be in your top 6 rotation someday. And then on the left side, I think
he's probably the most improved player for Buffalo.
Oh, absolutely.
Defensive-wise.
No doubt. And the other guy I like is Braden McNabb on the defense. He's a lefty, but he's got size, and his skating still isn't great, but he's comfortable with what he can do, and that's really big for a team that's struggling this much as Buffalo. And then you add in Zadorov, you add in Jake McCabe, who's tearing it up at Wisconsin right now. And the Sabres have a lot of defensive prospects between 18 and 22. And, the rumored return for Tyler Myers is a guy like Ryan Nugent-Hopkins or Jordan Eberle. They ship him to Edmonton.
Yep.
Or a Ryan O'Reilly from Colorado, or an Evander Kane from Winnipeg. And when you consider what you have on the defensive end already in the prospect pool, in addition to getting a bona fide number 1 center, which this team still doesn't have, I think that's absolutely a trade that you pull the trigger on if you're the Buffalo Sabres looking to move Tyler Myers.
I like the O'Reilly trade from Colorado. What they're offering for Tyler Myers, it's O'Reilly plus a pick, which I would take that in a heartbeat. Gives you another pick to trade away.
Absolutely, that I would do in 2 seconds. O'Reilly is the leading goal scorer on Colorado this year, I believe, with 23 goals. That could have changed recently, if I'm not mistaken.
It's somewhere in there. It's mid-20s.
He's a solid two-way center who doesn't take penalties. He's got some decent size to him, and is he a number 1 center? Is he a number 2? I mean, if you have him and Cody Hodgson, you have 2 top 6 centers. Maybe that doesn't alleviate your problem as much as Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, but I think that would definitely be a good return.
Exactly. Another thing, I hate to bring him up as a Sabres fan, but Darcy Regier, this whole rebuild should have been done under him, started under him, never did. When he re-signed Cody Hodgson, I think his plan was to rebuild around Cody Hodgson. And that really never materialized as a reason to sign him to a 6-year deal, I think it was. They gave him a 6-year contract extension this year.
Yep.
He's probably at best the number 2 center on Buffalo. Steve Ott was number 1 going into the year. But Cody Hodgson's probably the guy they're going to build around, just being under contract for 6 years on the offensive side. Tyler Myers, on the other hand, I could see why you want him there in a rebuild. He's 24, going to be 25 going into next year. But if you can get the value for a 25-year-old defenseman, I'd do it. I'd pull the trigger with who we have coming through. I'd pull it.
Absolutely. That definitely seems like the theme with the Sabres right now, is that if a deal comes along, you're getting fair value. Even if you don't like the chips as much that you're coming back, you can still deal them later for other pieces, as we're seeing with Halak and Stewart. And there's so many rumors that you have to believe they're going to be gone by this time Thursday. So with that, that's
Wednesday.
a lot of Sabres talk.
Tomorrow, isn't it?
Yeah.
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow's the deadline. What time is the deadline? Is it noon or 4 o'clock?
Deadline
I
is
forget.
3 p.m. TSN's going to be on NHL Network tomorrow
Yes.
from 8 till 3.
This is Christmas time for me, guys.
Yeah.
This is the most wonderful time of the year. I've been watching hockey movies all morning. I started with Slapshot, went to Youngblood. I think I'm going to go with Goon next. I haven't got the Mighty Ducks trilogy yet, so that's probably before work.
Goon is an interesting classic.
Oh, I love
Shout
that
out to
movie.
Goon, because I love that movie.
Shout out to Jake Baruchel for making that. That is probably the second greatest hockey movie of all time.
And the Mighty Ducks trilogy. Shout out to
Mighty
Emilio
Ducks
for that one.
Okay, I think that's enough on the Sabres right now, because there's still a lot of guys that are being talked about around the league that we have to get to. So the biggest name right now, I think we can all agree, is Ryan Kesler, because very few people saw this coming before even the last month or so, when it's reported he requested a trade from Vancouver to general manager Mike Gillis. There were some reports even that he requested a trade before the season even started with John Tortorella. But Kesler has not been happy. They stripped him of his assistant captaincy. They're trying to play him out on the wing, and now all signs are pointing to Kesler going someplace on the East Coast. It seems like the 3 teams right now that are highest on the bidding are the Pittsburgh Penguins, the Philadelphia Flyers, and the New York Rangers, and that's according to a tweet I saw from Nick Kyprios. So we'll start with Michael on this one. Michael, what do you think of the Ryan Kesler deal? What do you think could happen with him?
Well, personally, I don't blame him. I wouldn't want to play for John Tortorella either. I mean, you go from Alain, and this is completely baffling me about the entire season of the Vancouver Canucks. I have friends in Canada that are Canucks fans. They can't even tell me what the hell's going on in Vancouver. You go from Alain Vigneault, you're in the Stanley Cup Finals in 2000, almost 4 years ago now, and in maybe 2 years, you have gone to, how many games did they lose in a row? Like 6 or 7?
They're 1-8-1 in their last 10.
Yeah, thank you. So, I mean, what is going on? You're like completely crapping the bed worse than the United States did against Canada and Finland right now. Yeah, I'm still bitter about that one.
Who isn't?
If he goes, he goes. And personally, I think New York makes a lot of sense here. I think he wants to go back to playing for Alain Vigneault. From what I've heard, he doesn't want to go on the wing. He wants to be a center. He wants to stay a center. I think he wants to come back to America. And if he goes to Pittsburgh, I don't know if he'll be able to stay on a center position. I think he'll have to be playing a wing. You've got Crosby in the center. You've got Malkin in the center. You've got, their team's loaded over there. You just pick a guy, you can play him anywhere. I don't think Kesler wants to do that. So send him to New York. Let him play under his pal Alain Vigneault. Maybe send Ryan Callahan going back, with the whole Callahan talks. And with Callahan, I hear he's even trying to stay in New York as well. He's lowering his demands. So that's a whole other thing to keep your eye on. But that Callahan thing, that kind of makes sense to me. Kesler for Callahan, you won't have to throw any picks in there. It's a player-for-player deal. Each guy gets one, Callie, if he goes over, stays in Vancouver, gets to play for his old buddy Torts. He plays Torts' game. He knows how Torts coaches. A lot of those guys over there in Vancouver don't. Maybe he can educate them. Maybe he finds a home in Vancouver. Maybe he likes it over there. Maybe he stays. With Kesler, he gets another year under Alain Vigneault. He's got a year next year as well. Maybe he, digs it back in New York too. That right there just seems to make a little sense to me.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think if Kessler goes to Pittsburgh, that's the big rumor of how that would work out, because the rumored return is center Brandon Sutter, who's currently their second, third center behind Crosby and Malkin, and whoever's not hurt, and Simone Desprez, who's a big prospect defenseman, very, big, mobile, kind of all-around guy that could fit in your
28th
top four
overall
for
a
sure.
few years ago, yeah.
Yep, and 2 draft picks. So, Kelvin, my question for you, does Kessler get moved to Pittsburgh, or if so, where else is he going?
According to the Pittsburgh GM, and I quote, "We are doing everything we can to bring Kessler to Pittsburgh." That is the GM's quote from Pittsburgh, is that he is all in on Kessler. So it just makes me believe that he's going to sell everything he can to get him to come to Pittsburgh. He's going to put the trade together. He's going to throw picks in there. They don't need first round picks. They don't need second round picks. That team's just loaded front to bottom, from top to bottom. Pittsburgh's loaded. So
absolutely.
But does the Callahan thing? I like Michael's Callahan for Kessler to New York, but all signs indicate that Callahan's going to come down from his 7.5. He's come down from his 7.5 million per season down to 6 to 6.5, which is where the Rangers are offering right now. So I think they're going to re-sign Callahan before this deadline happens. I don't think they trade Callahan because he's coming down. He's 75% down from where he was to start the season for a contract. So yeah. I think he ends up in Pittsburgh. I think Pittsburgh sells it out. He goes to Pittsburgh and he plays the wing just because he's going to an instant Stanley Cup Eastern Conference contender. I mean, Vancouver's not going anywhere. They had too many issues with Luongo. Mad they didn't get to start in the Heritage Classic. So what's he going to do the rest of the year? Is he going to tank out just to prove a point that he should have started?
He better not. He's on my fantasy team.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up because as of the last few days, the Roberto Luongo machine is starting up again. Vancouver's an absolute mess as far as where the direction of the organization is going. I think they need to trade Ryan Kessler. They need to build up a prospect pool some more to get ready for the future. I think, like Kelvin was saying, Pittsburgh's probably going to be the likely destination. I think Dan Bilsma coached Kessler at the Olympics and probably said, hey, this guy is awesome. He's a great two-way forward. He shuts down opposing centers. This is exactly what we need. So, I think the old adage is that, when teams have talented players, they find a way to make it work. And I think whether it's on the center or wing, I think Kessler in Pittsburgh would be a great fit.
Could they send Jerome McGinley that deal? I mean,
Jerome McGinley's on Boston.
Didn't he go to Boston? He went to Boston. That's right.
I mean, he's flip-flopped his mind so many times by now. He could be back with Pittsburgh. He could be back in Calgary. He could be anywhere.
He's back in Dallas, man. He's back in Dallas.
He's back in Dallas. Where
in Dallas.
Where in the world is Jerome McGinley, the next great cartoon?
Yeah, forget Carmen Sandiego. Where is Jerome McGinley? But hey, right quick, guys, if I may, the one thing that's baffling me about the whole Vancouver situation is nobody was really talking about this when Alain Vigneault was there. Remember how last year we were all talking about all the problems that the Rangers were having, and John Tortorella was behind the bench? Now we're talking about all the problems that the Vancouver Canucks are having, and John Tortorella's behind the bench. Am I seeing a pattern here, or is this just a sad coincidence that seemingly somehow or another we keep talking about two different teams with about the same problems and the same coaches behind the bench? Is it just me, or is this sort of like the curse of John Tortorella happening again?
Yeah, I mean, come on, it's no secret that John Tortorella rubs a lot of guys the wrong way.
Horrible coach.
Yeah, he did win a Stanley Cup though, so to a degree the guy does know what he's doing.
He's got the potential.
Look at all the other guys that have won one Stanley Cup that are that didn't really pan out as coaches. I mean, can we name any more? I mean, there's only been a couple of guys that won multiple Stanley Cups.
That's true.
Out of all the sports coaching things, hockey is the obvious one to me that stands out, where your coach is the key to your success. It's all on what you sell to the players in hockey.
Absolutely.
your system that you sell, and I think he's just selling the wrong way to play right now.
Especially to a lot of guys who are used to finesse. The Sedins, finesse guys. I mean, yeah, you bring in a guy like Zach Kassian a couple years ago in that Cody Hodgson trade, which, by the way, as a hockey fan, baffled the hell out of me. That was I was totally confused by that whole entire deal.
Yeah, I had no idea about how that went down.
I figured you get a guy like Kassian he's going to bring there, and then like in 2010 when they went to the Cup, Kelvin, wasn't your cousin Maxime on that team there in the center? No, I know you guys aren't related, thank God. But I'm pretty sure, I mean, you had the grit line was there for Vancouver. Now all of a sudden you want the whole team to play with grit. Your top lines guys like, the Sedins are not used to it. Kessler kind of is because he can play that role. But, I mean, I figured it would have worked a little bit better. You got Yannick Hansen's in there, he's maybe like, a 10-goal scorer every year, and the guy, it would have been all right.
Yeah.
I think the whole thing is just completely messed up. I mean, who's in Vancouver's prospect pool? Nick Jensen and who? Bo Horvat. That's about it.
Bo Horvat, yeah.
Jordan
Schrader is a bit more of a pro prospect. I don't even think he has that high of a ceiling.
I would have expected him to be up here by now. I mean, I think he's kind of. I think a lot of people are done on Jordan Schrader. I mean, it's not like it used to be a few years ago when Vancouver had a nice prospect bed, and then all of a sudden it's gone. I don't.
Yeah. At the very moment, Vancouver's getting by with the likes of Brad Richardson, Mike Santorelli, whoever they can find off the waiver wire.
Jason Garrison.
Jason
Garrison was a hotbed in Florida, and then all of a sudden
he was.
Uproots goes to Vancouver, and now he's nobody.
Yeah, that could be part of Vancouver's problem too, is that they've put a lot of money around in the free agency market.
Yeah, and watch for them to if they decide that it's not going to be their year, they could unload some contracts too. Like if Kessler might be the domino effect. Kessler goes, maybe Alexander Edler.
Yep.
He's gone maybe. God, I can't start throwing out names in Vancouver that's not Henrik or Daniel Sedin, and who are getting up there in age as well. So you guys got to find placements for Henrik and Daniel Sedin. I mean, the Vancouver is not in a good place right now. It's not a good day to be a Canucks fan. I mean, at least with Kelvin being a Sabres fan and you guys living in the Buffalo area, you guys got stuff to look forward to. You guys got young, talented prospects coming. Vancouver has nothing.
Yeah, and Vancouver is probably about
10 draft picks.
2-3 years away from being where Buffalo is. Yeah, 10 draft picks in the first 2 rounds.
First 2 rounds, and we're potentially only going to get more. But I see us trading away probably 2 or 3 of those draft picks to bring in veteran players to show up, our young players, show them how to get around.
Marty St. Louis,
you're looking
Buffalo,
maybe 7 rounds. 7 draft picks in the first 2 rounds.
Louis. Yeah. 7 picks used would probably be a good number to think about. I think Ryan Callahan. I've heard a lot of rumors that his price is coming down to about what Nathan Horton and David Clarkson signed on the free agent market last year, which would be 7 years. Probably just about 5. It'll be more than their 5.5. So probably 6.
Probably around like 42 million, 42.5, maybe anywhere from 42 to 45 million overall.
Yeah, but the Rangers will have the room to keep him.
The salary cap will be fine for them.
Yeah, exactly.
Isn't it supposed to go up next year?
Yep. The cap's going up to $71 million next year.
Oh, yeah.
Over the next 2 years, doesn't it go up? I think it's the next 2 years. The cap goes up.
Yeah, but if for viewers out there, if you haven't read about the Rogers and the Canadian TV deal, read up on that because that is going to have a monstrous effect on the cap. I've been reading some reports that say in 5 years the cap could be up to $80 million, even higher than that. Guys complain about there's they're going to be so tight against the cap if they sign guys this much money. The salary cap is going way up, sky high. There's going to be the cap room to sign guys to big contracts.
The team that scares me with that already, spending right to the cap, Minnesota.
Yep.
Yeah.
That scares me.
If a goalie gets out there, let's say after the season's over, Yaroslav Halak or Jonas Hiller hits the market, and with that cap going up, God forbid Jonas Hiller hits the market with Minnesota having that much money. Anaheim, I don't know if Anaheim's going to have the power to.
I don't think but Anaheim doesn't spend a lot.
No,
And they've already
Jonas
spent
Hiller
their big bucks
playing
on
the
Ryan
way,
Getzlaff and Corey Perry.
Yeah.
with Jonas Hiller playing the way he's been playing, he's going to make bank somewhere. He's going to put it in that Swiss bank account of his back in his home country of Switzerland. He's going to make pay dirt in Minnesota.
Okay, so we're getting close to the end of our show here. So we're going to wrap this up with a little segment where each of us is going to walk through one team that we think is in contention for the playoffs, and they need to make a couple big moves at the deadline. We're going to play general manager a bit right here. And we're going to start off with Kelvin, and we'll work our way back down the line. Kelvin, who you got here?
I went with Detroit. Detroit is they're fighting for a spot right now. Their key need right now is defense. They need a top line defenseman to bring in. I'm looking at them bringing in. Who do I have them bringing in? I have them trying to get Tyler Myers from Buffalo.
That would be big.
It's one of the deals that's in the works. Is one of the teams that's interested in Myers is Detroit. Who they send back, they don't want to part with their young talent as of right now. So they probably send back a first-round pick and a second-rounder, and then possibly a defensive prospect, probably a left-handed. I haven't really looked at it that much, but it's probably going to be Tyler Myers or possibly going after the Canadiens' defensive player that's on the market. I can't remember his name right now. I have it written down here somewhere. No, it's the Islanders, McDonald. Andrew McDonald.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Going after Andrew McDonald. They've already they made an offer to the Islanders. That's a first-round draft pick. That's all they've disclosed is they've offered a first-rounder for McDaniel. So it's either going to be Myers or McDaniel that I think ends up in Detroit for a first-round pick, possibly a prospect, but Detroit's not willing to part with their younger prospects right now because they still have the faith in them. And their GMs come out and said that they don't want to trade their prospects right now, but they will if it makes them a much better team. And Tyler Myers or McDaniel make them a better team right off the bat.
Absolutely. I think Andrew McDonald is a real good prospect to look at. I think he's a guy that if teams don't want to splurge for Tyler Myers, he's going to be worth a first-round pick, maybe a prospect on top of that. But it all comes down to whether the Islanders feel confident enough in their young defenseman that they can move a guy like McDonald. But definitely I think that's exactly what Detroit needs to push themselves over the top in the East.
Well, they definitely have said that McDonald's on the market with Vanek. They're looking at both possibilities, but I see McDonald going before Vanek goes.
Yeah, the Islanders are definitely wheeling and dealing, and I think Detroit's a team that if they add a top four defenseman, they're going to be real set for the playoffs. Good job, Kelvin. Michael, we'll move over to you now, and I think I have a pretty good hunch who your team's going to be.
Oh, really? No. All right. George McPhee, are you listening? No, of course.
Oh, man, I was going to guess the Anaheim
That's all
Ducks.
right.
My bad.
That's all right. Look at me, George McPhee, and I know you're never going to see this, so this is actually perfect. Here's my handwritten letter. Dear George McPhee, for God's sakes, defense, get somewhere. How do you blow two consecutive two-goal leads in two straight games and then lose to the Flyers in an overtime call? You just got Dmitry Orlov suspended. You call up Jack Hillen. I never had faith in Jack Hillen from the beginning. He's broken his leg. He's coming back from major injury. I think the guy's only played like 35, 40 games in 2 years. No. Matt Niskanen. Go after Matt Niskanen. I don't care what you have to give up to give Matt Niskanen. As long as it's not Alexander Ovechkin, Evgeny Kuznetsov, Braden Holtby, Nicholas Backstrom. I don't care. Trade the farm. Trade your team. Trade everybody. Get Matt Niskanen. He's a guy that can help. We need somebody to help out Karl Alsner. We need somebody to help out John Carlson. Braden Holtby can't keep stopping 36 shots a night and expect to keep winning games. You don't want to go get Matt Niskanen? Great. Get a rental guy. Nikita, 27 years old. He's an unrestricted free agent at the end of the season. Columbus has got some young guys coming up in the pipe. Austin Matejewski, he's not there yet. He maybe has a couple of years. There's a possibility. Go get Nikita, and he's a two-way guy. Tom Gilbert, he's wasting away in Florida. Florida's not going anywhere. He can put the puck in the back of the net. He scored a lot in the University of Wisconsin. He can play a two-way game. Yes, plus-minus is a little shoddy right now, but he plays for Florida. What do you expect? Mark Stewart, Winnipeg. You don't really hear about this guy. Perfect. You don't have to sell the farm to get him. Yeah, Winnipeg's in a playoff hunt right now. So what? Go get him. Do something. Stop being a schmuck at the deadline. Don't do what you did last year and go grab a Martin Erad type of guy. Get rid of that bum.
And call the media to bring it down there.
Granted, Philip Forsberg has not been working out for Nashville either. But still, George, do something. Do not, please, for the love of God, do not make me change my affiliation completely over to the Los Angeles Kings. I'll do it, too.
I would believe you, man. That was pretty intense.
Bandwagon.
I agree, man. I think there's a lot of defensemen that Washington could go after. It's just a matter of, whether they actually do it, like you said.
And, with this first-round pick, I was really hoping that we'd continue to suck this season, because at the time we were, when we were really sucking, it was like, all right, we're in the top 10. Hayden Fleury from Red Deer is going to be a Washington Capital. Now we started winning again. We might have to settle for Julius Honka, which I'm okay with. But if we, keep this whole, we're going to, if you're going to trade the farm and trade this first-round pick, at least trade it for somebody decent, somebody that we can use down the road as well. So I will not feel completely, horrible about you getting rid of, somebody that we could have used in the future. I mean, we haven't drafted a good defenseman in probably 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, absolutely. Washington Capitals, they're going to get their defensive help, though. But we're going to move on to my team because I want to say hello to the Columbus Blue Jackets. They won about – hello, Columbus Blue Jackets. Hello, Jarmo Kekalainen. You're never going to see this, but hello. You won about 9 games in a row in the middle of January, and that was amazing. They put themselves on the radar. I have a feeling they're not going to be sellers at the deadline. I'm going to say they're going to be buyers. They need to go out. They're pretty good on defense. They have their top 4 pretty well set between Jack Johnson, Fedor Tudin, James Wisniewski, and Ryan Murray.
Who just got injured. Watch out for that.
Could they go after a guy like McDonald or Alex Edler and maybe move on from Nikitin? Probably. But I think what they need to do is they need to add another top scorer to go with Ryan Johansson because that guy is tearing it up this year. He's going to be a number 1 center. He was their 4th overall pick a couple years back. I want to say 2009. They still have Marion Gaborik. They still have Nathan Horton, who are both back, and they're doing their thing. I think a guy they could go after is Mike Camilleri from Calgary. I think Calgary's a team that's on the way down. Camilleri's a guy that's going to command a big I don't know if he's a free agent this year or next year, but he's a guy that's going to command a big, $6 million salary. I think Camilleri is a guy that has the versatility to play center or left wing, depending on who the Blue Jackets want to trade to free up the space. I think they could move a young forward, maybe Artem Anisimov or Nick Foligno, and a prospect and a first-round pick. And they could get a guy in Mike Camilleri who's got speed. He's got, like I said, the versatility to play multiple positions up front. And he's a guy that will be another top 6 scorer, and that's a guy that could give them some electric offense to go with their good defense and Sergei Bobrovsky in net. And I think this is a team that really could push to get in as a 7 or 8 seed and could really surprise a couple people come playoff time.
I hear they're making a push for Vanek from the Islanders.
Yeah, Vanek too, absolutely.
They're going with
same
Vanek.
thing.
Is who they're targeting.
I actually predicted this. I think it was last year. If you guys want to go check out when you guys go to Around the Rink, be sure to search for the house that Housen built. The pros and cons of General Manager Scott Housen's tenure in Columbus. I wrote it February the 17th of last year. I was on a bus on my way back from Baltimore, and I completely chronicled how bad Housen was, but he left some great pieces for Jarmo Kekalainen to come in and do what he did in St. Louis, and look what happened. So go check it out. It's a good read. And go check out all of our other stuff at Around the Ring. Seriously, guys, you have no idea how great these other writers are. I'm good. These guys are great.
Thanks, man. We appreciate it. Yeah, definitely.
Well, thanks.
As we're wrapping up here, definitely going to remind you guys to check out Around the Rink. Like Mike is pumping. We've got right along here somewhere. This way.
Other way. Other way.
There we go.
There you go.
We have our Twitter handle at ATR Sports Kings. You can find all of our articles there. You can find us on Facebook at Around the Rink. And our website, if you want to go straight there, is sports-kings.com. Don't forget the dash, /Around the Rink. And you can find all of our great hockey articles there. We've got a lot of good lists. We've got a lot of good content coming up with the trade deadline. Hopefully we'll be getting back on the Sports Kings YouTube. We'll get to go over the trade deadline and what actually happens. A lot of speculation going on. We'll see who goes. We'll see who stays. But on behalf of Michael and Kelvin, thank you guys for all tuning in, and have a happy trade deadline.